Hi, everybody. It's Lainey, and I am here to chat with you about one of I would call it probably the biggest pitfall of challenging parenting a challenging child. And the biggest pitfall that that I see and that I have parents contacting me about and that I deal with myself is around shame. So when I talk about the pitfall being shame and challenging, keep saying that, parenting a challenging child, what I mean to say is if a challenging child is just not cooperating, they're flat out ignoring or they're flat out defying or, um, you know, uh, completely just saying no to the thing that needs to be done or the request that's being made, parents are extremely likely to use shame as a corrective measure. And there are all sorts of shame that we can talk about. But the bottom line is that shame is a way to make somebody feel that if they don't do this thing, that they don't belong. And it's going to be striking a chord of fear in them deep down inside. And this is different. This is different than trying to guide somebody toward a behavior that you want them to do. This is actually what most parents resort to in one form or another when their challenging child is not behaving, because the parents, you, are at your wit's end. You have tried asking nicely. You've tried asking 10 times nicely. I've heard it. I've actually been on the phone with people while their child is in the background, and I hear it. They start off by saying, will you please, start doing your homework? And, it starts off nice, and then it's, I really need you, hey buddy, or hey sweetie, I really need you to sit down and start doing your homework, right? The repetitive asking starts to escalate. And then the parents feel like, well, I'm asking nicely and they're not doing it. And so then it gets into, starts morphing, right? It starts morphing to, if you don't do your homework, there's going to be a problem here. There's sort of an implied threat there, right? Or if you don't do it, you're not going to get to watch the movie we talked about. If you do it, you can have that candy. If you do it, you can have your play date. There's the bribes that's implied. And so we know about threats and bribes. Those are pretty clear, right? Like ways that we're trying to get our kids to behave. But the shame can be more insidious. The shame can be more like, why can't you just sit down and do your homework like a normal kid? Or why can't you sit down and do your homework like your brother does, or like your sister does, or like your friend or your cousin does? Why does this have to be so difficult? And we start turning the light back on them to say, this is, your fault. This is something that you're doing. And what happens with challenging kids when that happens is that they do start to internalize this feeling, even if it's not like a direct message like that, but it's a feeling of, oh, there's something wrong with me. Why am I not like my cousin? Why am I not like my sister or my brother? Why are my parents so disappointed? What's wrong with me is the message that becomes internalized. And that is really, like, to me, the core, the essential question, the essential driver of shame, which is somebody starts to question what is wrong with me. And so what you'll see as a result of that, when there is any kind of shame going on, with little kids, it's like, don't be a bad boy or don't be a bad girl. Those are some typical languages that can, contain a lot of shame for kids. And what happens is that then we start seeing our kids behaving in ways that show that they've actually internalized that message and they feel bad about themselves. Why am I I'm so dumb, or I'm so stupid, or I can't do it, or nobody likes me, or this kind of downtrodden message. And a lot of times we're not doing it on purpose. Sometimes there's something that parents do where they're trying to get their kid to switch their behavior on a dime, and so they're using these tactics because they don't know what else to do, right? So it's like And I get it. I totally get it. It doesn't mean that like you're a bad parent or anything, but there's sort of this desperate quality to like my kid's not listening, and I need the cold water in the face. Like I need them to listen, and I need them to snap um to attention right now, right? So I am going to bribe them. I am going to threaten them. I am going to pull out all the stops because I don't know what else to do. And then, later on they're like, oh man, I wish I hadn't said that, or I wish I, had tried something else, or, there's not that ability to try their things in the moment. And if you're running on empty, if you're a tired parent, and which most people are, and you feel like you tried it once or twice the nice way, right? I tried being nice, but it didn't work, and so I had to yell. Yelling is going to give your kid a sense of shame for sure. We end up accidentally creating this self-talk tape in our kids' heads. And then when we hear it played out loud later on, and we hear their self-talk, how they think about themselves later on, it's heartbreaking. It's totally heartbreaking. I have people tell me all the time, like, I feel so terrible that my daughter or my son says, they suck, or they're terrible at this, or they're terrible at that. And all I can tell them is, no, you're not, no, you're not, no, you're not. But it's like words on words aren't going to be the remedy for that. And it really has to come from a much deeper place of kids learning at their core that really no matter what their behavior is, that they belong in your family as a person, right? Even if sometimes you're like, can I trade this one in? Or, I didn't order this kind of a kid. Like, can I swap him or her for another kind or another kid? Just, even if you sometimes feel that way or have that thought, again, there's nothing wrong with you. People have those thoughts all the time. But the point I'm trying to make is that no matter what their behavior is, there has to be a path cleared in your family for your most challenging kid to feel a sense of deep belonging. And shame works against that. Shame works to separate people from other people. Like, in small tight communities, if you misbehave or you break the rules, you're out. It's like the ultimate shame, walk of shame is like, you're out of the community, Amish or whatever. You were caught doing this thing that we don't do, and you're out, and you get ostracized, right? So there's this feeling that kids get of feeling ostracized or kicked out from their own family, which is terrifying for them. And eventually what becomes true for that person will be that they feel a sense of disconnection and being ostracized from themselves. That's like when shame really takes hold and digs deep. And if any of you have experienced that with your own self, that's why. It's because at a core level, you were made to feel like there was something wrong with you, and you were made to feel like you didn't belong on some level. Even if your parents were like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, right? Telling you all the time, which is not true for most of us. But even if your parents were full of, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, but their behaviors and how you were being corrected in your behaviors gave you the sense that there was something wrong with you. So it's really important to distinguish between there being a behavior and there being a person attached to that behavior. And when we are working with our kids to shape and guide them, we need to become expert at separating out the person from the behavior so that we don't slip into shame as a parenting tool, because it will make people feel terrible in the long run. That's just how shame works. And again, internalized sense of shame is a very toxic thing. It takes a lot of work to exorcise that, to get it out of you, and to live in a way that you can, it's like the essence of all the self-healing and all the self-help stuff is like, I have this deep-rooted internal sense of shame. I don't know why. But everything I do, I just feel like I'm not good enough, or I don't belong, or I'm wrong. It's where perfectionism comes from, right? Because there's a sense of shame around making a mistake and owning your mistake and making good in, making it right. So shame is this really, 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 really powerful and often insidious thing that will get in really deep. And I just say, rather than living a life of shame and then later on having to spend another half a lifetime trying to undo the shame. Let's just take shame off the table from the get-go with our own kids, which is a hard thing to do. Because if you were raised with shame and you're somebody who struggles with shame yourself, then how on earth are you supposed to raise your kids without shame? Well, there are ways, and that's a big part of what I do with my clients. But the biggest sort of nutshelled version I can give you is that in order to remove shame from the menu, you have to be replacing it with the deepest level of empathy possible, right? Because shame cannot exist where empathy is. Empathy is like the kryptonite of shame. So if you are being empathetic and you're shedding light on a situation, shame really thrives in the darkness. And anytime that you are shining a warm, loving light on anything that you feel shame about, you are eradicating shame. It just can't survive there. And when it comes to parenting your child without shame, you have to become really skilled at noticing, when am I, like, these are the questions to ask yourself, like, when am I trying to, shame my child into being different, into behaving different, because I want them to fear that, that they, how do I want to say this? I think I want to back up a little bit off of that. I think we recognize shame in our kids, in our parenting our kids, especially our challenging kids, when we're really trying to go in and control their behavior. That's what I want to say. Because anytime we're going in to control their behavior, we're really going to be pulling out all the stops. And so that is, I would call it like the red zone of parenting when we're looking at it from a shame perspective. Anytime that you're going into just control your child, chances are very, very high that you're going to be reaching for the different shame tools, the yelling, the bribing, the shaming, the threats, right? The comparisons, all of those things fall into a shame, the threats of spanking, all of those things fall into a shame category. And so that would be the sort of red flag that I would look for in myself, and I would tell you to look for in yourself when you are trying to control a behavior as opposed to try to teaching your child something which is coming from a different perspective, and using empathy as the main tool. So that is what I have for you today. And it's a really tricky one. Shame is, if you're a Brene Brown fan, like I am, you know that shame is this really like slippery, slick kind of character, right? Because it operates in the dark. And so a lot of times we have blind spots around it, or it sneaks around and it sneaks up on us in ways that we're not really expecting, we're not aware of, because shame doesn't come up with a huge sign going, I'm going to make you, operate from shame right now. It's just way more insidious than that. And so what I wanted to provide with you today was just a little bit of light so that you can like start shining your flashlight into those dark corners, and you don't have to let shame be your driver. Okay, you can actually step into the driver's seat and, kick shame to the curb and, look at what is operating for you in those moments so that you don't leak that stuff out onto your kids. Because over time, shame absolutely becomes toxic and becomes something that becomes harder and harder to get rid of in our own lives. All right, so that's what I have for you today. I guess the last thing I want to say is that for challenging kids, as they get older, it's really, really important to have a handle on this, because the older they get, the more aware they're going to get that when you're disappointed, when you're frustrated, when you're angry, and if you've got a kid who struggles socially, right, because of their challenges, if they're super impulsive and they say things that are like out of bounds, or they have a hard time paying attention and they're really bouncy, other kids are going to start to notice, and other kids are going to start to say things to them. And your child is going to start internalizing these things from the culture that they're in more and more, and may not feel that they really belong. Oh, I don't belong in this school. I don't belong in this class. I don't belong in this peer group. I don't belong on this team. I don't belong in this show. I don't belong in this lesson. Like whatever it is, they're going to start feeling that they don't belong. And that moves into adolescence where everybody is like, I don't belong. Nobody feels like they belong in adolescence, right? That's like the time of deep separation. And so we just want to be raising them so that they know that no matter what, they know in their bones that they belong in our families. And there's a sense of acknowledgement, allowance, and acceptance of who they are, not all their behaviors, but of who they are, so that they know in their bones, you know, no matter what, I am loved and I'm supported and I'm accepted in my family, right? Which doesn't mean anything goes as far as behavior goes, but no matter what, as a person, I have a place where I am loved and I am appreciated and I am allowed. I am allowed. Hey, Hillary, good to see you. I was just wrapping up, actually, so I think you're going to catch this stuff on the replay, but it's really good to see you here. All right, so that was my final thought for the day. And yeah, Hillary, totally watch the replay. And anybody else who's watching the replay, just put your hashtag replay in there. Give me a thumbs up, make any comments that you want. And if you have any questions as a follow-up, you can post them in the video below. All right, you guys, I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.